Welcome to the course of British novel. We are studying Tom Jones, written by Henry Fieldings. Let's start with the Unit 1, some aspects of fiction. We have in it the structure, that is, objectives, introduction, the novel as a fiction, fiction as history, the evolution of novel, some problems, shift to prose in the 18th century, the novel as a new literary form, the novel as comedy, and let's sum up. Objectives. As the word fiction possesses problems, the aim of this unit is to examine the relationship between financial and realistic deceptions. The novel can be seen as dealing with questions, issues as well as with the facts of history. The 18th century is the century of prose as well as the rise of the novel. With both prose and the novel focusing on the common ways of life, the novel emerged as a new and significant mood of writing, becoming more than a means of providing entertainment. It became a means of radical questioning that would lead to a change in entrenched attitudes. The aim is to discuss these questions in the course of this unit. Introduction. This is the first unit of the first block in your course on the British novel. As such, you will find that we discuss some basic issues here which will help you to understand not just Tom Jones but also the subsequent novels prescribed. So go through each section carefully and critically. Now that you are doing a master's degree, you will need to read widely and variously. Try and find some of the books on the novel recommended at the end of the block from your local library and try to read these alongside this unit. It's not compulsory for you to read these books, but reading them will certainly enhance your understanding of the novel as a literary form. The novel. The novel as fiction. As against imaginative or fictional, the novel is a realistic form. It presents that segment of life and society in more or less approximate terms, which has been seen and experienced by actual men and women in a particular period. The concept of mirroring or reflecting on an object is more significant in the case of the novel than it would be in the case of poetry or drama. There is indeed the assumption that a social situation with its problems and issues is faithfully recorded in the novel and that the reader does not come across any major flights of imagination on the part of the writer. Also in the novel, there are no concentrated descriptions that point towards the dark recesses of the mind, the mysteries of the soul, as it were. At the time of writing, the novelist seems to have definitely conducted that his men and women are of the day-to-day kind, working, chatting, moving around without the high furnishing of soul, psycho, and mind. They seldom poeticize or see themselves in the heroic mold, while pursuing their ordinary goals of securing bread and butter, which entails most of their waking hours. The peasants, craftsmen, and traders of a specific social world are part of mundane situation. The job of the novelist is to see how these people conduct themselves, enmeshed as they are in their specific surroundings. While reading a novel, you may feel that we have been transported to a different world with its own laws, rules, and regulations. Towns and villages, markets, streets, and pathways hold out as actual places in their distant coloring and feel. Yes, the emphasis is on actuality. Not only are the people shown as speaking with their very own mannerism, but ordinary information about their appearance, condition, opinions, and states of mind also is imparted by the author in his or her own voice. The second aspect of writer's practice implies that the describing person, the novelist, has an opinion or a point of view according to which he/she judges without such surplus the actions of the different characters selected consciously and with a ostensible purpose for presentation. The judgment of the writer is based on all judgments. As all judgments are, the biases obviously indicate that the writer is totally immersed in the overall fate of the characters as well as the effect of their behavior on the life and nature of the society. In this sense, the writer can be seen as a possible member of the actual society of the time as well as the society reflected in the novel. The remarks of the author, meant clearly for sharing with the reader, lend authenticity to the description in the novel and make the reader accept it as a truthful account. This leads to a state in which the reader is strongly drawn into the echoes of the world of the novel. In the course of reading a novel, therefore, the reader may feel that he or she is witness to an actual happening in which real people have been involved. The words of the text do not merely signify themselves, sometimes outside of or away from them. Instead, the words are are there on the page as a picture or pictures which introduce the reader to their world and bind him or her to its specific aspect. There is no wonder that the reader of the novel would get fully absorbed in the goings-on of the word chosen by presentation in the work. This is what I mean by the novel as a realistic form. IGNOU, on the other hand, denotes an unreal thing, a creation of the mind of a person gifted with an unusual, inventive, and powerful imagination. It is also suggested that words in a text under the imaginative category have to be taken as tools, and that the artist works with their help to fulfill his or her specific artistic, moral, spiritual purpose. This purpose may be to produce a literary work of exceptional symbolic spiritual significance. What is fictional then? The word invented or invention is yet more meaningful in this case. It denotes that the account presented in a work bears no relation with the reality of life as we know it. It is imaginative and more, it's a fictional. In this sense, fictional would be more appropriate a term for poetry. Isn't fiction a non-fact, a lie? Most of us wish to leave the existing world of high routine and drudgery so that we move to other in which we can do what we like, where wishes would be heroes. We also notice that maker of the lie, a liar, is an interesting person as against one who preaches high morality. Have we watched the behavior of a liar closely? If we have, we would mark that a liar, a compulsive liar, is one who is mentally alert and all the time notes changes in the face of the listener, who keeps track of their modes and constantly struggles to find out what his or her audience wishes to hear. The liar accordingly modifies the lie as it is in progress. It is because of the fact that the liar is highly inventive and imaginative. But there is a difference. While poetry and drama are also invented and imagined, they can't be equated with a lie. On the other hand, they are high truths. It is not because of this lie aspect that the novel has been associated with fiction. While poetry and drama talk about the truth, the universal, all-embarrassing wisdom, the novel as a fictional piece may rest content with presenting an ordinary life situation. In this way, the irony behind the fictional piece can't be missed, or can it be? Fiction as history. Fiction as history. Fiction or fictional has come to acquire such strong affinities with the novel that we use the two synonymously. Walter Allen, in his book The English Novel, has drawn our attention in this regard to the issue of artistic representation, the way a writer gives shape to an experience in her work. Characters in a novel symbolize specific attitudes in a given society, and the writer conveys through them those significant impressions which she or he has gathered from their surroundings. Characters and social impressions merge into each other, and the end product strongly binds us to the presented action, but the writer does not merely gather impressions from life. What happens is that the impressions precede characters and are in fact molded and remade into characters by the author. In this case, they are truly fictional. Molding and making implies that the author's imagination has been at work in an intense manner. There is also the problem of a plebiscite, lifelike situation that the writer is supposed to invent. This means that characters in the novel can't be constructed and rendered flesh and body unless they are placed in identifiable circumstances of our own world. The men and women in a work of fiction become our links with the period in which the writer has lived and stand for those actual trends that existed at the time. Through the all-worthy Western, Jones and Blifil in Tom Jones, for instance, we gain close familiarities with the developments in the 18th century England. The process is complex, but the truth is simple. In a peculiar way, the actual circumstance of the society of a period becomes a necessary component of fiction. Fiction becomes insignificant history. This is how the line between the imaginative and the real gets blurred, and history intrudes inevitable into fiction. In Walter Allen's words, perhaps characters are never anything more than a literary exercise, but its relation to novel is obvious. The first magnificent fruit of its marriage with reality, however, is seen in works of history, especially in the great portrait gallery of Clarendon's History of the Rebellion. This was inevitable. Before the novel, which must be a greater or less degree be an imitation of the actual word could be born, there had to be works already in existence which were not imaginations, which were not imitations. That is not fiction, but faithful descriptions of the actual world. So, among the strongest influences of what was becoming the novel were works of history like Cladrens are soberly careful accounts of real-life adventure, distant countries, and strange people like Jampire, a new voyage around the world. The question posed here is whether fiction comes to gradually resemble history, or to put in another way, history becomes the all-important subject of fiction. We can take the argument into other plan and say that around the 18th century in England, history became a matter of vital interest for the common writer who sets out to do justice to it by focusing upon the behavior and problems of ordinary men and women. However, the novel is different from history in one important respect. History, as we see, it is a long, continuous process without a clear, tangible beginning as well as an end. It goes on unfolding itself beyond its specific actors of a period, its men and women who are active within it to influence and change it. On the other hand, the novel begins at a particular point of life in society as well as ends at another point. Those 2 points in the novel, recognized and chosen by the author, are extremely significant because between them lies that segment of life, social life, captured as it has been through words, which vibrates with meanings at every turn, and this contains within itself a totality and a certain truth. It is a significant difference between history, the life of actual people at a given time, and a literary work. In the examination, students are generally asked to comment on the ending of a novel and tell the truth that has been constructed with its help. Why? Because it is assumed, and rightly perhaps, that the end matters in terms of the lesson which the novelist set out to convey to the reader. Replace the word lesson with the word moral, and that we have is a fable which has to establish a useful aspect of human wisdom relevant to the period in which the writer lived. The reader gains this wisdom by virtue of rigorously following the course of events depicted in the novel, and sees that the author consciously took him on a specific journey in imagination. The same thing can be preceded in an account of history, but with less emphasis, since the historian is much more answerable to the actuality of events, the socio-historical reality of the period under study. In fact, in history, moral lessons can be noticed as merely scattered, and the historian, if he choose to clearly underline these morals, can be accused of violating laws of objectivity. He can face the accusation of allowing subjective biases to play the decisive role in the presentation of the historical account. Yes, there are lessons in history. Yes, there are lessons in history, but they are the tentative creations. Of course, no useful study of the history is possible without them, of the pursuer or the interpreter, not of history as such. For instance, a specific understanding of history can be countered by author understanding. You can see contrasting lessons conveyed by author, interpreter of the same period in history. This is because history is no single person's or group's creation. In fact, being a bigger continuum, it is not the creation of one person, group, or even the whole society at the specific period. Simply taken, it is found there when we are born, and it would hopefully be there when we die. In contrast, the novel is an author's creation. It entirely belongs to him or her. If the individual so wished, the writer of the novel could be indefinitely referred, or the idea altogether discharged. Such is the grip and bind of the author on the novel, on its writing. Starting from the idea of fictional piece, the author gives its slant and direction. One can go to the context of saying that the author has a large number of alternative strategies to choose from. This means that the shaping of the novel involves a great deal of flexibility.